Good evening, everyone. My name is Eiki Isomura, Artistic Director at Opera in the Heights. We're coming to you live. On behalf of my wonderful colleagues at Musiqa, we send our most sincere wishes for your safety and wellness during this time. Thank you so much for joining us for the second night of a two-night event, revisiting the double bill of Cassandra and the Leader. Last night we had a great time revisiting Anthony Brandt and Nina Bieber's Cassandra, both through the film presentation as well as the talkback session, as we'll do tonight with Karim Al-Zand's The Leader, based off of the Eugene Ionesco play of the same name. Cassandra and The Leader premiered last February in a double bill at Opera in the Heights in a co-production with Musiqa, and ran for a successful two-weekend run. And what you'll see tonight is a beautifully captured film version of the stage production that was directed by the brilliant Cara Consilvio, who also created the scenic projections. After the show, we will immediately hold a talkback session featuring the composer Karim Al-Zand, as well as the baritone Mark Diamond, who plays the leading role, as well as me, who conducted the performance and had the most wonderful time. So please, as you are tuning in on the YouTube channel on Musiqa's page, please submit your questions in the comment section, which we'll follow very closely, and look forward to taking those questions immediately following the performance in the talkback session. So looking forward to connecting with you afterwards. Without any further ado, here is Karim Al-Zand's The Leader.
Oh river. They're shaking his hand. They're shaking his hand. They're shaking, shaking, shaking. He sticks out his thumb.
Shaking his hand, he's got his thumb.
They're laughing. They're giving him a box of tools. What's he going to do with them? He's signing autographs. The leader signing autographs. The leader is stroking a hedgehog, a superb hedgehog. The crowd applauds. He's dancing with the hedgehog. He's dancing. The crowd applauds. He's dancing with the hedgehog. He's dancing with a hedgehog in his hand.
He's sitting with a hedgehog in his hand.
He's embracing his dancer. Hooray! He's being photographed with his dancer in one hand and the hedgehog in the other. He greets the crowd. He spits a tremendous distance.
Is he coming past here?
Are we really on his route?
Is he coming in over to the next one?
Right, don't move. You're spoiling everything. Quiet! I tell you! Didn't I tell you he promised that he had fixed his itinerary himself? Hooray! Hooray! Long live the leader! Long live the leader! Long live the leader! Quiet! 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 Long live the leader! You two, calm down. You're spoiling everything. Hooray! Hooray! Long live the leader! He's changing his shirt. He disappears behind a red screen. He reappears. Bravo! Bravo! Long live the leader! The leader! He's putting his tie on. He's reading his newspaper and drinking his morning He's still got his hedgehog. He's leaning on the edge of the parapet. Leaning on the edge of the parapet. Right. He gets caught, unaided. Bravo, well done. Long live the leader. He brushes his soiled clothes. He's mounting the stool. He's riding piggyback. If I were king, if I were king. They're offering him a riding crop. He knows it's meant as a joke, but he doesn't mind. He's laughing. He's mounting the stool. No, he's getting down. If I were king, if I were king. A little girl offers him a bouquet of flowers. What's he going to do? He takes the flowers. He embraces the little girl. Calls her my child. Calls her my child. Calls her my child. He gives her the hedgehog. The little girl is crying. She's crying. Bravo, bravo, long live the leader. Bravo, bravo, long live the leader. Long live the leader, long live the leader. Is he coming past here?
Is he coming past here?
He's going away. Hurry, come on. Hooray! pressing his trousers, he walks about. He takes the flowers and the fruits growing in the stream. He also tasting the roots of the trees. He suffers the little children to come unto him, come unto him. He has confidence in everybody, confidence in everybody. He inaugurates the police force. He pays tribute to justice. He salutes the great victors. Bravo, bravo, bravo. And the great
Wait,
Wait!
You won't
Wait!
catch me.
Wait! You won't catch me!
Wait a moment, wait a moment.
You won't catch me!
Wait a moment.
You won't
Wait,
catch me!
wait,
You won't
wait,
catch me!
wait.
You
Wait.
won't catch me!
We missed him.
Rotten luck.
It was your fault. That's not true.
Oh, that's not true. Catch me.
Wait a moment! You won't catch me! Wait!
It was your fault. That's not true.
That's not true.
Are you suggesting it was mine? No, we didn't mean that. Hooray!
It's over there.
Yes, it's from over there. Hooray! It's from over there.
It's from over there.
Hooray! Very well. Follow me. Long live the little bird, the little. Hooray!
It's from over there.
Yes, it's from over there. Hooray! It's from over there. Hooray! Very well. Follow. It's from over there. It's from over there. Long live the
You won't get me.
Wait a moment! Wait a moment! Wait a moment! We'll get The leader is alive. The leader. The leader. The leader. He's the leader. The leader. To your places. Attention.
is coming What's he need a head for when he's got genius? That's true. What's your name? What's your name? What's your name?
Thank you again for joining us tonight, folks. I'm Eiki Isomura, Artistic Director at Opera in the Heights. Karim?
And I'm Karim Al-Zand, the composer of The Leader.
And I am Mark Diamond, baritone and the singer of The Announcer throughout the piece tonight.
Great. I'd love to jump right into the questions that we've gotten through our YouTube feed. Let's start with Natalie's question. Natalie asks, how different is it approaching a new work as opposed to an old masterwork, maybe this is more for Mark, is it freeing when there aren't a ton of productions or interpretations before you, or is it just more stressful? Mark, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question, and I think a lot of people are curious about that because I've actually thought a lot about this, and I do think that yes, it is way freeing. It's really, really a liberating process to be a part of new art and new music, and new opera in this case, because in the event that you have a gracious and willing composer and music staff, there really is no limit to what you can achieve. And in this case, that was the case. We had amazing collaboration among all of us, and it was very much a freeing experience. If there was something where I felt, oh, well, this wasn't quite comfortable the way that I just did it, I could easily walk across the room and say, Kareem, do you think this is possible for me to maybe phrase it this way instead? And he was always more than willing because it was a collaboration. And if didn't make sense with his initial thought, we worked through that together. So yeah, absolutely, it's freeing in that way. And then also with old masterworks like that, there's a lot of baggage that comes along with them. Thank God I'm not a soprano. Sopranos are expected to interpolate these crazy high notes into all of these bel canto arias that aren't written there, all because some show off back in the day decided they wanted to try it. So, there's more to it than that. But there is a lot of expectation, even within those moments, there are people that the audience sits there and listens, and they're waiting for that high note, and they don't even know that's not written there. And so, there's a lot of baggage and expectation that goes along with those older works and those master works. Not to say that they don't have their merit, but this is a very, very liberating and freeing experience. Absolutely. To be able to be a part of that. And on top of that, this is such a sort of abstract piece in itself that it can really be interpreted in many ways. And so I think it leaves a lot of doors open as an actor, and within the drama throughout. And so, yeah, we had a lot of fun with this piece. And so
Can
I
I
think that's a
jump in
great
there?
question. Thank you. Yes, please.
Well, I have to say it's really fun as a composer as well, and actually the ideal situation because normally, when you write a piece, especially if it's a piece for, say, an orchestra or something like that, you get the piece ready, and really it has to be absolutely ready. I mean, note perfect in terms of not only not any mistakes in there, but you really have very little room for miscalculation of any kind. And in this situation, we're putting on a piece that's 30, 40 minutes long, and it's theater, right? And you can't always predict how long something's going to take, the timing of a certain thing, if a joke is going to land, if you need extra music to transition from one scene to another, or less music for that matter. I mean, we had many cases like this. I mean, none of them required huge rewrites, but it was just so nice to be able to tweak and as a composer say, oh, that didn't work maybe as well as I had hoped. Can we try this? I mean, Mark and I were going back and forth, I remember several times, with some words that he had to spit out very quickly, and we kind of rewrote them on the fly. So as a composer, it's really just a perfect scenario. Not only are you there, but you're sort of seeing the whole thing. In a way, the composition process sort of continues through the production. In a way, it doesn't end at my desk. It sort of continues through the rehearsals, through the staging, through the projections, all of that. So yeah, it was definitely a treat for me. It's not often that you get that sort of constant feedback.
And am I right, Kareem, that this was actually your first opera, right? You had written some vocal works before, but this is your first opera. And I will say that I was actually pretty amazed at how close we got on the first draft of things. I mean, it felt like things flowed across the stage the right way. It felt like when I said words, they made sense, and that is not the status quo among all composers. So it was really a refreshing and an easy process in many ways. So yeah, kudos to you for that, Karim.
Aki, I had a question for you. I mean, what is it like, seeing it now, not having to worry about keeping everybody together and sort of, shepherding the whole ensemble, just being able to step back? Did you have a different sense of the piece, or were you able to sort of hear more things?
Well, there's this expression that conductors like to invoke, that the opera conductor has the best seat in the house, and I don't know that that's true. I think it's you're in the hot seat, and there's a lot of pressure, and your brain is processing a lot of information very quickly, and so to be able to sit down and actually pay attention to every hilarious expression on Mark Diamond's face, and to see Kara's beautiful projections in all of their glory, and just all of the awesome shtick that our hilarious cast was doing. I mean, I was certainly aware of it, but I feel like I'm really kind of able to synthesize all of it into to one really awesome experience.
I felt
so
the same way. I felt the same way about the projections. I really, I said that in the comments of the YouTube. It was amazing to be able to see the projections while I was watching, because, I'm standing there most of the time facing out, hoping that I am somewhat in line with the projections, but it really was a cool effect, and I think Kara just did an amazing job, and it was just, I saw her in the chat as well, so it was good to know she was around.
I mean, Kara, I feel like that, at least for this piece, just the way it's written, the fact that there's so much repetitive material, there's so much words you're saying again and again. I feel like the choreography, the onstage, offstage stuff is as much a character in this piece as any of the actual, singing characters, because, just the moving the sets and the whole sort of CNN type reporter thing that was going on. I really loved what she did with it. So that was kind of a joy to work with her as well.
Perfect segue into our next question from Emma, which she said, Karim, did you collaborate with the stage director while you were writing? The direction complements the musical irony really well.
It really does complement it, and I can't take a lot of credit for that. I mean, that was Kara. I mean, I had some things in the score, but they were relatively generic things. I mean, I did mention that the announcer character, which Ionesco, by the way, doesn't really specify. He just calls him an announcer. But I figured it had to be a kind of 24-hour news cable kind of guy. Also because of all the connections and resonances to modern day. But no, she had so many wonderful touches. I mean, just to name a couple of them, when the two admirers are doing the dance while they're singing "Long Live the Leader," Kara had researched various fascist salutes. And so when they're doing those dances, while the music's repeating it over and over again, and they're working themselves into this frenzy, they're repeating these historic salutes, which she did in a very sort of tasteful and kind of not on the nose way that you would notice it if it was there, but it wasn't sort of really heavy-handed, which I really appreciated, because I mean, I think what I love about Ionesco is that it's funny, it's really funny, but then while you're laughing, you're thinking about what you're laughing at, and it's kind of making you, it's sort of doing a kind of backdoor proselytizing in a way. It's not really telling you what to think. It's just showing you these absurd images, and then you sort of laugh, and then you kind of think, well, maybe I really shouldn't be laughing at that. Anyway, so Kara did most of that, I have to say.
Yeah, I would certainly wish Kara could be with here tonight. We're so glad that she's tuning in to the stream, and she has been just part of the creation of this work from the very beginning. And this production, I'll just speak from the perspective of Opera in the Heights as producers. Was a huge stretch for us to do a projection-driven design. Ours is not a conventional theater in the least, and she held our hand the entire way from figuring out all of the rigging of the equipment to make that design work in our quirky little space. So thank you, Kara. I'd love to just to take another question from Emma, and this was about how flamboyant the characters turned out to be, and certainly a lot of that is Ionesco, and a lot of that is Karim, and a lot of Kara, but certainly lots of Mark Diamond and lots of our castmates as well. She asked, are these the most flamboyant characters you've ever had to play? And was it weird being so over the top?
Yeah, I think that's a great question again. I mean, it's funny with this type of a character. I think mine was the least flamboyant of the five, personally. But that's also because I was the one playing it, so I was most tapped into this character. So, as an actor, one of the things that we try, or an actress, one of the things we try to do is take ourselves seriously on the stage as that character. So, as I was the announcer, I had to keep reminding myself, I think that I'm being very serious. I think that this is life or death, that we find that we find the leader. And so while there is certainly there's a lot of shtick and there's a lot of flamboyancy and a lot of fun that goes along on stage. I'm the whole time trying to remind myself, no, this is very serious. I don't know if it's incredibly evident, but I tapped into some Ron Burgundy throughout the process. So I thought of that same character, Ron Burgundy. You watch Will Ferrell in that role, which is absolutely absurd, but he's taking himself 100% seriously as that character. So you have to do that to get the best comedy. That's it. Certainly was one of the most flamboyant, but it didn't feel that way in the moment. If I had to find any others that sort of topped it, I would say maybe Papageno or something like that, where he's all over the place and back and forth, and one character 1 second, another next, and sort of schizophrenic in a way. But this is very, very different, and I thought it was a lot of fun to play him as very serious. So yeah, that was my sort of experience with that.
I loved hearing that Ron Burgundy was part of your inspiration for the character. I think you made it so your own that I don't think we would have detected it, but now I won't be able to unsee that. So thanks for that. On the topic of inspiration, we have a question from Dorian, who asks, what was the inspiration for this opera? And we know that it is based off of Eugene Ionesco's play of the same name, but maybe Karim, you could talk a little bit about how you discovered that play and just the process of adapting that.
Sure. Actually, the genesis is from quite a while ago. It was a project that I had worked on with a conductor friend of mine, and for various reasons it didn't work out. I mean, I knew Ionesco's work, particularly through Rhinoceros, which is probably his best known work, which is a full-length play. But the leader is written around at the same time, I think 1951 or so, and it deals with a lot of the same themes. And I knew I wanted to write something that was relevant, that had some sort of contemporary resonance, even though the play is 70 years old now. It feels like, at least to me, like it could have been written yesterday. I mean, and in fact, all the kind of issues we're dealing with in this country, I mean, it only becomes more relevant. Even seeing it now versus seeing it in February, it becomes even more, funny / frightening to watch. So, the interesting thing about the Ionesco play is it's very short. I mean, it's literally maybe 4 pages of writing. So as far as adapting goes, I really didn't adapt in the sense of, I didn't change any words, I didn't add any words. But take, for instance, the final scene where, finally they're starting to snap out of it, or at least, they're confused about what they're doing there. That's literally one line in the play. It's all of them saying, "What's your name? What's your name? What's your name? What's your name?" So in a way, it was kind of the perfect libretto for musical adaptation, because okay, I can run with that. I can kind of compose that out and stretch out that moment, which I think is justified given all of this absurdity that comes before it. So it was a challenge to work with the play, but actually it's quite musical. It's quite lyrical at least in a sort of joyful way. Thanks
Yeah,
for the
follow
question.
that up.
Actually,
Go ahead,
I'm
Mark. Go ahead.
sorry, Aki. I just wanted to say really quickly that I was gonna. I have a quick question for Kareem about that scene actually, because I had a really fascinating experience with that because we went into that final scene, and this is one of the coolest things about being in a new work is we go, this is what we think the audience is going to respond like, and let's hope we get there, right? We're trying to inspire a response, but at the same time, we're not trying to curate a response. We want them to respond to the moment in a natural and in a way that resonates with them. For me, that final scene resonated with the audience differently than I expected it to, and it worked really well. But I wonder what your takeaway from that was. Did you feel like that was what you expected whenever we went into the What's Your Names from the audience and stuff like that? I feel like that was a really cool moment for me.
Well, to be honest, that was the part of the opera of all the parts that I was the most nervous about because there's a real tonal shift that happens at the end, right? And it happens very quickly. At least happens very quickly on paper in the play. And I mean, I actually have never seen the play as a straight play on the stage, but it seems to me that that moment is sort of the crux of the whole thing. If you don't get that right, you're not going to pivot in the right way towards the end. So that took me a long time to write, and especially sort of the timing of it, having it last long enough. So I was really hoping, I mean, if I'm absolutely honest with you, I didn't know that it was going to work in one way or another. I was just hoping it was going to. But yeah, it was one of those moments where I thought, well, we'll work through it and figure it out when we're putting it together. I still had in my head, well, maybe it's just not going to work, but we can still have time to fix it. But yeah, I think it did work well. Yeah, it is a really kind of dramatic moment and you guys did so well with sort of taking time and sort of, I know Aki we put in more space in the orchestra part and we kind of let it breathe a little bit so that sort of tonal shift could happen more organically and wouldn't feel quite so, sudden and like shifting gears without clutch or something. So
I
good
thought it was
question.
great. I didn't quite expect the sort of nervous laughter that we got at the beginning because it's almost like this uncomfortable, like, oh wow, this is getting really weirdly heavy all of a sudden. And so do we laugh? Do we not? And so I thought it was really well, it was just beautifully executed and just a cool in any opera, even Barber of Seville, you never know where the audience is going to laugh every time. Each night will be different. Every production will be very different. And so it's always interesting to see how that audience responds, but especially in a new work. So yeah, I
Yeah,
thought that was
that's
really cool
amazing.
moment.
And actually you guys on stage, that's one of the things I'm so impressed with is that you're absolutely right. The audience is reacting very organically and very differently. And I remember one of the nights, I can't remember which one it was, in the whole eggs scene, where they're going on and on about eggs and, how much I love them. And people were just uproariously laughing to the point where, you had to kind of, it wasn't you, it was actually Zach and Lindsay.
Right.
You had to kind of pause and sort of, let there be air. And that kind of flexibility, I think, is really impressive. So, kudos to you guys.
It was great to hear you talk about how it took a long time for you to interpret and craft that ending when you were confronted with the original text. I'm curious to know, Mark, actually Kareem, what was maybe a section of the play that you had the most fun setting, and then maybe Mark, after that could you maybe give us a sense of when you first looked at the score, or what parts were you most excited to learn and also perform?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun writing a lot of it, actually. I mean, this piece was fun to write. At the end, it was a little, difficult, challenging to write the end. But no, all the interactions between the announcer and the two admirers, I had a lot of fun writing that. I mean, the challenge there was kind of interesting compositional challenge because if you think about it, like all the action they're describing is not happening on a stage, right? It's happening somewhere else. They're seeing it happen. So from a theatrical kind of dramatic point of view, that's a bit of a challenge. You know, everything that's happening in the play is not actually happening on stage. So I had a lot of fun sort of having the admirers sort of imitate or repeat or sort of, you know, act out some of the things that Mark, the announcer, was saying. So that part of it was really fun for me. But yeah, I'm curious, Mark, what about your preparation? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, you know, when I got the piece, I took a look at it, and it's a relatively short piece. So, but it was kind of, you split into these four scenes essentially for me, and all of them had their exciting moments. But the thing that drew me actually musically was, I think it was the third scene or so, the groove scene. You guys will know what I'm talking about, but the leader, the da da dee da, and I just thought, oh, this is gonna be cool, because this is not the type of music that most opera singers get get into a little bit. So it felt a little bit like I was, you know, singing I was a crooner at a jazz club or something for a second there. But you know, so I really enjoyed that moment musically, and I enjoyed learning that moment musically. All of it was exciting, of course. But actually, on that note, I'm going to throw it up to Aki, because I have a feeling I know what it's going to be. But I wonder for you, what was the most difficult part to put together musically of this piece?
Oh man, yeah, Kareem knows exactly which one. It's the moment towards the end when everything hits the fan, and all the leader, and there's the hi hat on the offbeats, and that section kept me up at night. But yeah, that was, I mean, that's just a straight ahead, you know, ensemble matter that was just going to take rehearsal, and I'm so glad that we pushed to find the time to polish all of the thorny bits, because it really paid off beautifully. And yeah, that
Well, and
was,
not to interrupt, but to
yeah.
interrupt, I don't know if it was that part that was keeping you up at night, because I don't know if everyone knows, but you also had a child during, like, the how many
That's
days
true.
before we
That's
opened
true.
the show? So that
Yeah,
might have been part of what was keeping you up at night. So, but
Right.
that
it's
Absolutely.
amazing. So,
was part of it too. Yeah, but
Good point.
yeah,
Yes.
I loved, yeah. You know, when I just since we're talking about when we first opened the score, and looking at parts that we're just looking forward to learning. Yeah, the first part of the score that I got to know was actually the groove section you're talking about, with the, you know, well, there are many breaking news bits, but one of that one in particular, and we did that as a preview, and you know, I got to know that scene really well, and felt like, wow, this is such an attractive, exciting rhythmic style, and then to see, I always knew that, well, that was the scene that didn't have any of the lovers, and to finally then see the music of the lovers, which had so much reminiscent of 19th century operatic style, and there's, you know,
oh yeah,
there's all this mandolin-esque music, there's a lot of Puccini-esque music, and but at the same time it's very kind of Frenchy and impressionistic, and
Debussy and
yeah, Tara played off of that a lot with the projections, and I thought, wow, this is so transportive, and so I got really excited when I saw how much the tone shifted in that moment. So bravo to Kareem.
very cool.
Yeah. I think we're in a good place. I'm just going to check the YouTube feed to see if there are any other questions. Just lots of praise, guys. It says, great double bill with last night's Cassandra. Thank you, Michael. Absolutely. You know, this was conceived as a double bill with Cassandra, such that the first half would have a tragedy in it, and the second half, after an intermission, would have a comedy, and they definitely are great complementary parts. You know, similar forces. The orchestra is only a little bit different, and it doesn't take a lot of singers. So opera companies out there, I know you were impressed with what you heard, so give these pieces a second life. They definitely deserve them. I know you're out there. And it was such a privilege to get to do the premieres of these. Someone asked if there's pressure in doing something that doesn't have any traditions behind it. It's just a straight up joy and a pleasure getting to be part of establishing the performance tradition of this work that's just being created. And so just very grateful. Any last words from y'all?
Well, just thanks to everybody. I mean, even of course the people who aren't able to join us. It was wonderful working with everyone over the course of, what was it, 2.5 weeks, something like that. I'll always remember it. It was very special. So thank you.
Yeah, and I second that completely. It was such a pleasure to work on this piece, and what a crazy thing to find out this was the last thing I was going to work on before all of this hit. And so this is my last musical memory in the last 6 months. So it's a wonderful memory to be left with, and really a gift. And yeah, I also want to second what Aki said. Absolutely, this is the type of a piece that could definitely have second life. If there's anybody out there that works at a university, it's great for students, great, very approachable.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I think these are just such wonderful pieces, and I'm just so proud to have been a part of them. And thank you guys for inviting me to be here for this talkback tonight.
Thank you so much, folks. We'll let that be the last word. And thanks again for joining us. Please stay safe and well. And we look forward to being with you all at a concert hall or an opera theater again sometime soon. All right. Take care.